Hi, I'm Andrew McCrae. Welcome to our farm and ranch in northwest Missouri. My great-great-grandfather settled here in 1910, and I'm the fifth generation to grow crops and livestock here. As a farmer myself, I know the highs and lows of this life, the issues we confront every day, some new, some as old as farming itself. This show is a place to talk with farmers and others in the ag industry about topics that mean something to us, topics that can improve the present and future of our operations. This is Farming the Countryside. Welcome to Farming the Countryside. Casey Seymour is my guest. Casey with the Moving Iron podcast and knows all things machinery. Casey, thanks for taking time to visit today.
I appreciate it, Andrew, and that's a big list you have there for me to fill. All things machinery. That's a lot of stuff these days.
Well, we'll do our best to cover all things machinery. Let's go here. I have a couple things on my mind today, among many things, but we know that right now we are in tighter crop margins. So people are probably looking to perhaps cut costs a little bit. That could be with machinery. So if I'm looking to cut costs on my machinery, would you have any game plan for me? Because my machinery probably isn't worth as much as it was a year ago or something. So how do I cut my machinery costs but still be profitable in this coming year?
That's a loaded question, man. You come out flinging here right out of the gate there, Andrew. Yeah. Well, that's a good question. Happy you get asked that question a lot, and as you look at what's happening right now, if you go back and look at a lot of different surveys and stuff that's come out, and this is getting to be bigger and bigger trend that's out there, but equipment's about the fourth or fifth thing on the list now. You start looking at farmers' needs when they start going through, okay, I've got this much money, what do I do with it? And then right now, and equipment seems to be trickling down on the list compared to where when I first started, it was one or two. Now it's 4 or 5 or maybe even sometimes 6 on the list of things that are out there. I think when you're looking at the strategies to save money is when you have to start look at your overall direction that you're trying to head down with on your farming operation. Are you at a transitional period right now where you're bringing more people into the farm? Are you growing? What is it that's happening in your farm that you need to take a hard look at and decide where you're going to move forward with that at? If none of those things are happening, you're just kind of status quo, and this year's going to look a lot like last year did. Take a look at where you're at and what you have. I mean, I think this is one of those years where you're going to look at parts and service business at a dealership is going to be carrying a lot more water than the whole goods side of the business. And I think a lot of folks are going to sit back and say, hey, I can spend that X number of dollars on this combine or tractor or whatever it is that I'm looking at. And that's going to help me get through this next season. And then I'll make that decision as to what I'm going to do going into 2026. As far as equipment values go, and how you can look at things and be profitable is if you look at over year auction values, and I follow auction values closely because that's kind of a cash on the barrelhead, what's it worth today, trend line. No bull associated with the numbers, right? This is what it is. And as you're looking at that year over year numbers, values have come up. So we're seeing used equipment values start to trickle up, which I expected that would happen in 2025. If you look at the last downturn we came out of 2012 through 2014, 2017 was the year that kind of was the stabilizing year. 18, 19 kind of became the new normal, and then we moved. The COVID thing happened, and that really changed things. But we're seeing that right now in 25, where things are starting to stabilize. We're starting to see some movement up and move things forward. So if you're looking at, hey, what do I need to do to be profitable? I take a hard look at what direction is your farming operation headed. And then secondly is if none of that's happening, then take a hard look at what's it look like just if you go through the reconditioning process and you put some parts into those machines to get through this season.
If I'm looking at my equipment lineup, and let's say it's a regular row crop farmer, so I probably have a planter or planters and some harvesting equipment, tillage equipment. Among that sector, is there any place that I begin with? Or I know it depends on your needs, but I'm just curious how those sectors can't stand up against one another right now with their value.
Yeah, so I think we'll start with harvesters first because I think that's the best place to look at combines. Combines to me is about every 750 hours you hit, about roughly 500, 750 hours, you start running into some really big reconditioning costs associated with those machines. And once you spend that money, you need to go out and run the machine for a year or two to get your money back from the parts you put in, and then go down the path. I've always encouraged guys to look at their combines as, if you're about a 1-year-old combine and it's got a couple hundred hours on it, a used one, and you want to run that machine, and you're typically a 3-year trade cycle guy on your combine. When you start getting to 500 hours, you got to start making some tough decisions about what it is that you want to do moving forward, right? If you're 2 years in to your trade cycle and you hit 500 hours, that third year, you're probably going to spend some money on that machine. So, and not just some money, a lot of money, because those are some pivotal, component parts that are that's just when they start to kind of fail in that time frame. If you put the big dollars into that machine that year, you probably need to run it one more year. So 4 years to kind of be your trade cycle. So when you're looking at those machines and you buy them, you think about your trade cycle and what your trade cycle in your head looks like. If you don't have a trade cycle, you're just saying, hey, I'm tired of this machine, I'm ready to get a new one, then that's one thing. But if you have a set every 2 or 3 or 5 years or whatever your cycle is, you start looking at those machines and start looking at how many hours a year you're going to put on the machine, what are the hours that are on it now, and then start looking at it divisible by 500 to 750 hours. And those are going to be some key maintenance points that you're going to run into on the combine. Now we start looking at tractors and stuff like that. That's a little bit different. Tractors are the most random expense that you spend there is just the servicing points, right? We used to joke all the time at the dealership that $1,500 was the valet fee to get the tractor into the shop, because it's just expensive anymore to get stuff done. You start looking at price of filters and oil and all those things that come into play, it gets pretty expensive. So again, when you're looking at just standard maintenance stuff, you can spend a significant amount of money on a tractor, but typically there's not a lot there that you have to worry about really coming apart on a regular basis, like a combine where there's a lot of moving parts inside that machine. Planters, every couple of years you're going to run into some depending on the number of acres you put across it. Every couple of years you're going to run into some maintenance points there when you start looking at seed plates and those kind of things. Start looking at opening wheels and trash wheels and those kind of things. You start running just some stuff that are in the dirt a lot, and you're going to start seeing some stuff that kind of gets wore out there. But somebody every couple of years you're there. But to me, I've always been focused when I talk to a customer about a piece of equipment. The combine was the one thing I always wanted to make sure that they had that full mind in, because you have the planters on one end of the growing cycle, and the planters are in the combines on the other end of the growing cycle. So you need both of those machines to be in top working order in order to maximize your profitability on the farm. And those were the two things I talked about, but primarily I was focused on, where you at your combine, how many hours you plan on putting on there, what kind of reconditioning costs have you associated into your farm. And then if you've done that, let's take a look at what's that pattern look like, and then let's start making that plan for what your punch out number is for that combine. Each year you take a look at that. So the combine is the most heavily influenced by the down market and least influenced by the up market when you start looking at equipment. It takes a beating on the way down, and just takes a long time for it to come back. Everything and COVID's a good example. So during COVID, there were a lot of machines that just disappeared off the face of the earth because so many people were out buying stuff, and combines weren't one of them. And their pricing structure was the last one to really rebound, and it kind of rebounded towards the tail end of everything, just in time for it to go back down again. So it was combines are just a tough one to pay attention to, or not a tough one to pay attention, but a tough one to kind of keep in that range. But you got to make sure you stay on top of it, because the number of parts that come through it and trade cycles and those kind of things make a big difference in profitability as far as managing your combine fleet.
If I'm an operator that would like to make some trades right now, maybe some of this equipment is lower priced, but whatever I have to trade in is probably lower as well. But is there a game plan on where I should look to trade? Let's say I have a combine or a planter or a tractor. How do I decide where the best deal is right now to be able to swap something out and get a little newer?
Yeah, it is a double-edged sword, right? So if you're buying cheap, you're also selling cheap. So that's the kind of adventure that you go down. You go to start looking at stuff. I would say right now, if you're looking for a deal, there's plenty of opportunity for you to have a good, strong deal making process at any dealership you go to, right? There's plenty of inventory out there, so there's plenty of guys out there willing to make some deals and make things happen. When you're looking at the trade differences associated with the machine you're buying versus the machine that you're trading in, yeah, you're going to see some differences there that may be a little bit shocking depending on how much you've kept up on the if you bought something the last 3 years and you haven't bought anything for 3 or 4 years, you're going to see a big slide in where equipment values are, just because from where you bought that piece at 3 or 4 years ago to where it's at today, it's going to be a huge, massive spread. But the really good thing about what you see right now is that there's, even with interest rates like they are, where you're looking at standard rates between 6 and 8%, depending on and higher on equipment loans, there are a lot of dealerships out there that are going above and beyond, trying to help out their customer base by showing some low interest opportunities out there. I mean, I've seen as low as, some 0% stuff on tractors and combines up to, as high as 3.5%, 3.9%, stuff like that, so, and then obviously standard rate stuff on top of that. But if you really look and are out there looking at where you're at, all things considered, you have an opportunity to have a fairly decent opportunity to get some low interest if you really are looking for that. Now, on the other side of that is, when you're trading something in and it's a lower rate, and how those things work. Like I said when I first started doing this, it might feel bad now, but it would have been a lot worse if it was last year. So this year is going to be a little better opportunity for you to trade than last year would have been. And even if you can wait till the tail end of 2026, I think you're going to have an even better opportunity to trade for even higher valued machinery. But there again, you're going to be buying it for a little bit higher than you could. So if you wanted to have your cake and eat it too, you buy your machine now and trade your other one in, sell your other one at the end of the year, and I think you'd have a pretty good opportunity there.
Tell me about what's happening on the new side, regardless of equipment manufacturer. My perception is that we aren't making as much new. Number one, is that true across all brands? And if so, then what does that mean either now or down the road for this market? Because we don't have as much new entering the system, so to speak.
Yes, I mean, I look at this a lot like coming out of the Great Recession, right? 2008, 2009, 2010, manufacturers really pulled back in 2008, 2009 especially, right? They pulled back, stopped manufacturing stuff, and it created a bit of a shortage as you look at going into 2010 and 11. Price of used equipment shot up because there was some opportunity there where they were filling some gaps for new stuff that wasn't available at the time. And then that ushered in, the whole, Section 179 double depreciation and all those kind of things helped that speed that along too. I'm kind of seeing something similar to that. If you go back and look at that time, it took them about 18 months to get things back and rolling. They really started, making machines heavy and hard in the 2009 order writing period for 2010 delivery. So basically 2010, 11, and 12 were 3 massive years for the amount of equipment that got actually sold and then delivered in those timeframes. I'm kind of looking at the same way now. Every manufacturer out there has cut way back on their manufacturing staffs and support staffs and those kind of things. So again, it's going to take another, if the economy came back tomorrow and we were just humming, $5 plus corn and all that kind of stuff, it would be, I think, 18 months before we saw a really good push back into back into the new market production. And so that means if you look at that time frame, that puts you somewhere in the neighborhood of 26, 27 time frame, which I feel like that's going to be, I feel like if we see right now, I don't see a lot of guys sitting down with their dealer and saying, like, I feel really good about 26 and I'm going to go ahead and gamble on that for a bunch of new machines to be delivered in 2026. So, we'll go from here. Did most farmers, as you're looking at what they're doing, they look at how each year finished out, what kind of money they made, and then they start making their buying decisions for for that next coming cycle that comes up. And so that's kind of the Achilles heel of ag equipment space, is that everything runs in year cycles, right? So you see the good things coming, it takes about a year for that to get there. You see the bad things coming, you see it takes about a year for it to get there. And I've always made the equation that you watched a car drive 2 miles an hour through through your neighborhood for 6 months, wondering when it was finally going to stop, and it just finally stops one day, and it's long ways down the street before you realize that it was even in your neighborhood. So it was that opportunity to me, when you see a lot of stuff move new wise, will be in 2026 going into 2027. But during that time frame, if we continue to see crop prices try to get back up to that high $4.90 something or low $5 something, there's going to be a really good opportunity that used equipment becomes in higher demand. Now, that being said, there's a lot of used equipment out there, especially late model, low hour stuff. So this will be an opportunity to get some of that stuff kind of cleaned up and pushed out the door. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think there's going to be some opportunity. Like I said, if you can wait till the end of the year to make some buying decisions, your used equipment, I think, will be worth more. You'll be paying a little more for it, for what you're getting. I don't think you even be paying that much more for what than today, what the pricing is, but the value of the machine you're trading in should come up. So,
with the new equipment right now, do we know any impact with tariffs and impacting steel and other component prices in that, or is it too early to know how that's impacted the new price?
I haven't heard anything yet on that. Because typically most manufacturers put out any kind of yearly price. They have a yearly price increase every year. Most of that stuff comes out in the first quarter of the fiscal year, when they start looking at that, or the first when order writing periods open up, which typically those start opening up about the end of February and kind of go through the first of February and kind of go through the end of October for the most part. And that's kind of that frame that things happen. Each order writing periods, typically they assess any kind of price increases they want to have, but for the most part, things like tractors don't typically have an order writing period, so they open that up. I haven't really heard of anybody that has seen anything crazy on price increases yet. Not to say that it won't come. I think during COVID, we had 2 or 3 interim price increases every year. You never knew if you're going to come to work the next day and what you just sold might have gone up 2 or 3% the next morning. So, I mean, it was not to say those kind of things don't happen, because they've happened a lot, but I think it would be hard pressed to have see something like that happen, just with the state of the way things are right now.
You and Machine Repeat, of course, have your podcast together, and you're always looking at all kinds of different equipment. Any places in this used equipment that is still hot? I wonder if livestock producers, especially cattle guys, have been doing all right as compared to some of the row crop farmers. So any equipment, whether it's skid steers or lower horsepower tractors or things like that, remains strong in comparison to other parts of the used equipment?
Sprayers have been one of those things that have really, shockingly enough, have had a pretty good run here of late in the auction market space. You've seen a lot of strong sprayer values come through, and that was a little bit of a head scratcher for me, just because of sprayers are kind of one of those things that you do see a lot of people updating the sprayer and those kind of things, but the movement that I've seen in the sprayer so far is just it's a little more aggressive than I've seen in the past. So it's a positive, so it's a good thing. A bit of another head scratcher is if you look at like loader tractors, like that 125 to 175 horsepower loader tractor, that range in there, you would think with the way the price of cattle have been here of late and some of the profitability stuff that we've been hearing from various ranchers and producers out there would be a little more draw into that loader market space, but it's really not as strong as I would have anticipated it to be. Not because there's not enough machines out there. It's just, I don't know. It's just like, I think, again, it kind of goes back to that equipment's like the 4th thing on the list, 5th thing on the list that people are looking at. And especially in, uncertain times like we're in right now, where you don't know, we're one tweet away from having something really great happen and one tweet away from having something really bad happen, and it could all happen in the same day. So it's going back and forth. You don't know for sure where you're at. So, I think a lot of folks are just kind of pulling back right now and really just buckling down with what they need to have doing. That being said, I think, like I talked about earlier, I think the end of the year is going to be a very action-packed last quarter of the year.
You mentioned sprayers there, and I was curious with the technology we've seen in the last year or so with the See and Spray and some of that latest technology. Does that change what happens in the used market? Are guys going to try to get ahead to get some of that either new or recently used type of equipment to get that better technology, or is it too early to tell yet in the sprayer market?
It's probably a little too early to tell. But I think the one thing though about that sprayer market, planter market, the same way, is that the upgrade kits that you can get for these machines now, right? To me, I think I look at this as kind of like the future of agriculture a little bit, and how equipment's going to be bought and sold. And you don't have to go out and buy well, it's crazy to say this, the $450 or $500,000 used piece to get that, right? You can start kind of piecemealing this stuff out as you need to get it for your operation. So when I look at that, I see if you can go get See and Spray for a 2018 and newer, John Deere sprayer for a significantly less amount than you could do if you went and bought a new one. I mean, it's like 20 or 30,000 bucks or something like that to get that put on your sprayer. So it's those kind of things like that are kind of what the game changing part of this is. When you start looking at, again, we talked about profitability when we first started out. I mean, there's a great opportunity to take a look at the planter you have and take your 24-row planter or 12-row planter or something like that may be 10 years old and update it with the latest row units, and you have a new planter. There's nothing different about it, right? You have the old bar still, but if there's anything that's over-engineered in the ag space, it's a planter bar. You could, with short of run it into a bridge or a telephone pole, you're going to be okay, right? So I think those are some of the scenarios that you're taking a look at. But there's a lot of opportunity there to look at upgrading your equipment via add-on parts.
Casey, with the time we've got left here, you're looking at all sectors of the equipment market. I just want to give you a chance, whether there's something that you think is hot right now or not, or where the deals are. Just give me your general ideas on what you're seeing out there.
Yep. Well, I think if you're in the market for a high horsepower row crop tractor, that 350 to 450 horsepower tractor, there's some opportunities out there to take a look at that and take some advantage of some low interest rates that are out there, machines like that. So we talked about sprayers. That's a good opportunity. And I've even on the smaller, like construction side stuff, if you're looking at some skid steers, there's some deals to be had on some skid steers out there I've seen. So I think if you're looking for something, there's really not a lot out there that I can point at that says, hey, this is really, really hot, or hey, this is really, really cold. Everything has a pocket in there somewhere. You have to just find out what that is. And most of it revolves around interest rates right now.
And you have the relatively new podcast. You've been on for a little while, but talk about that for just a moment, because folks that are following machinery will want to probably tune into that.
Yeah. So Moving Iron Podcast, I've done that for a long time. I just recently joined the Farm Journal team. I'm excited about that. Me and Greg Peterson, our co-hosts of the Moving Iron Podcast, Machinery Pete, and every week we come on and talk about what's happening in the world of the market, in the world of machinery, as far as auction stuff goes, and what we see happen out there. And I usually have a friend of mine named Aaron Finnell that comes on. We interview a couple different folks from dealerships, so we kind of get an idea of what that looks like, as well as what we see happening in the commodity space with some commodity folks I have come on. So really a kind of elevator speech of that is if you're looking to buy equipment or sell equipment, and you want to know where the money's coming from that they're going to use to buy that equipment with, check out the Moving Iron Podcast. You're going to see the trend lines out there that are going to show you how that works.
Yeah, Moving Iron's a great podcast, and now with Machinery Pete, so it makes it doubly as good, right?
That's right.
Casey, I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Andrew. Take care of yourself, and thanks for having me on the show.